Right now, I make over $100,000 per year, do work that is actually interesting to me, and live in a city I love. But the reason I got here is because in college, I applied to over 100 internships, one of which led directly to the job that I have right now. So I'm trying to pack as much knowledge as I possibly can into this video, including how to look for internships, how to maximize the success of your application without spending hours and hours on it, my own experience with interviews and negotiation, and a ton of other stuff. But first, let's go over why internships are so darn important in the first place. If you go to any job site and filter for entry-level jobs, almost every single position will still request multiple years of experience. This can feel absolutely hopeless if you're still a student, but you should not get discouraged. For one, internships can apply to that experience, but if you do things right, you'll never even have to apply to an entry-level job in the first place. In my video explaining how I landed a six-figure job immediately after graduating, I explained that internships are the best way to land a high-paying job out of college. I never even had to do another interview because my company liked me so much, they just gave me a full-time offer. Companies almost always prefer to hire interns because they know interns already have experience, the company has already tested the interns and knows they're a good fit, and because it's way easier to hire an intern than it is to find somebody new. And that's why Chegg reports that over 70% of internships result in a full-time offer. So now that we've covered why internships are so important, let me explain what I learned from applying to 100 of them. But first, let me ask you a question. What's the very first thing you should do if you want to land an internship next summer? If your answer is to change the date on your resume, sign into Indeed, and start applying to every internship you see, you'd be wrong. I'm going to explain in a bit why sending the same generic application to almost every company will almost always fail, and how to fix it. But we're not even ready to talk about that yet, because the first thing you need to do is figure out your requirements. When I first started looking for internships, I was overwhelmed. There are literally millions of internships available every year. You do not have time to apply to every position. Well, at least not if you do a good job. Your life is going to be so much easier if you know what you're looking for. So before you even begin applying to internships, you need to decide on things like what locations you're willing to work from, the types of positions you're willing to do, and the minimum payment you'll accept. You should only start to look for internships after you've answered those questions. But now you're ready to start applying, so let me share how I found great internships, red flags that I avoided, and how I kept my sanity. There are tons of job sites that list internships, but these are actually the worst places to start your search. If you want to land an internship you actually enjoy and double your chances of getting it, listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. There's a very good chance that your dream company doesn't even list their internships on large job sites. Many companies have their own careers page, which is where they list all of their opportunities. If you really want an internship, this is where you need to go. Many of these career sites get 10 times less applicants than job sites like Indeed or LinkedIn. And since you took the time to go to that company's website, the company knows you actually want to work for them. When I was in college, I had internships after both my sophomore and junior year, and I didn't find either of those internships from a large job site. But you're not going to know every single company, so it's okay to use public job boards too. I personally almost exclusively use LinkedIn because the positions seem to be much higher quality. But remember, you cannot apply to every position. Being a computer science major, I completely ignored unpaid positions because I knew I could do way better. I also avoided any job postings that were super generic or vague because it's hard to tell what the company is actually looking for, so that's just a waste of time. I also avoided any job postings that had a super long list of requirements because that tells me the company is super picky and has super high expectations. And internships are as much about your own growth and learning as they are about helping a company do something, so I definitely prioritized the postings that called out curiosity and an interest in learning. And to stay organized, I highly recommend that you keep a spreadsheet of all of the internships you've applied to. I kept track of the position name, the location, any salary information if it was available, the date I applied, the date of any interview or communication from the company, and the date of any rejection. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter if you apply to 1 million internships. You simply won't land a great internship unless you do what I'm about to tell you. It's not uncommon for reputable companies to literally get thousands of applicants, and Google reportedly only accepts 4% of them, making it even harder to land a Google internship than get into Harvard. And Blackstone, the private equity firm, has an acceptance rate of 10 times less than that. So if you're the hiring manager, what are the chances that you accept an applicant that sent in a generic and boring resume that they clearly sent to every other company? There is no way, and that's why you have to tailor your resume to the specific application you're applying to. The best way to do this is to go through the job posting and write down the keywords and phrases that they say that they're looking for. Then you can include those words in your resume. When the recruiter searches through their applicant tracking system, there's a much higher chance that you'll pop up. Now, you can do this manually, but there is a 0% chance that I would have had time to apply to 100 internships if I did all of this by hand. And that's why I use JobScan, one of this channel's partners. To be clear, the reason I partnered with JobScan is because I used them so much in college and I found the tool so useful. I did not use JobScan just because they were a channel partner, because, well, this channel didn't even exist back then. JobScan basically does exactly what I was just talking about, but it's all automated. It scans your resume and the job posting you're applying to, and it gives you tips and tricks on how to improve your resume and your cover letter. And you can keep scanning until you're confident that your application is good enough. I literally cannot tell you how many hours this saved me, so there's a link in the description if you want to check them out. And at the very least, if you go to a college with a career center, make sure to check out the resources that they have available. But whether you do this by hand or through fancy software, if there is one thing I hope you take away from this video, it's that you have to tailor your application to the specific position you're applying to. And getting your resume noticed is definitely the hardest part, but it's just a foot in the door. Applying to an internship is just the first step. So let me explain my experience with interviews, negotiating, and how to succeed as an intern so that you get a lucrative return offer. In terms of interviews, I actually had a very different experience than a lot of my classmates. For me, this really just involved a 30-minute chat with my potential boss just to make sure I was a real person and that we were a good fit. But again, this was very different from a lot of my classmates. A lot of them had stressful technical interviews where they had to write code or perform other tasks. But even then, the questions were usually pretty easy. So honestly, the best thing you can do for an interview is just show up with positive energy and a ton of confidence. They wouldn't be interviewing you if they didn't already think that you were a good fit. So you just need to show that you are a real person and who you said you were on paper. So finally, after all of that, you'll finally get an offer. And a lot of times, this is actually the first time that you'll hear what they're willing to pay you. And a lot of people just freak out about negotiation here, but here's the thing. As an intern, I would not worry about negotiation. In both of my internships, negotiating wasn't even an option. A lot of companies have set rates depending on what year of school you are, and they just don't have time to negotiate with every intern. And even when you're looking for early career positions, this is still pretty common. A lot of companies just have a fixed rate that they offer to any new graduate. So unless you have multiple offers that you're trying to decide between, I wouldn't worry about negotiation at all. But as important as internships are, an internship doesn't guarantee you anything. An internship is just an opportunity. It's kind of like school. You can learn a lot in school, but if you skip class and don't do your assignments, then you can get through it without learning anything. The same goes for internships. And something a college mentor told me is that your first job is the hardest job to get. So while most internships result in a full-time offer, it's important to work hard and prove to your company that you'll be a great fit as a full-time employee. In other words, don't waste this opportunity. I had no difficulty getting a return offer from my internships, but I did everything I was asked to, always met deadlines, and looked for new ways that I could add value. And even if you don't want to work full-time for the company you interned for, make sure to learn everything you possibly can. And it might be worth it to accept a full-time offer just to get experience and move to a new company in a couple of years. But I wanted to end this video with one more piece of advice. At the end of the day, you will be rejected from internships. Out of the 100 plus internships I applied for, I only got an interview for maybe a dozen of them. Over half of them never even responded at all. But at the end of the day, I still ended up with my dream job at my dream company. So you cannot get discouraged. Every time you apply to a new position, you need to immediately assume that you've already been rejected. This is really hard for a lot of people, but you cannot waste your time thinking about an old position or waiting to hear back. That's simply a waste of your energy. As soon as you apply to one internship, start immediately looking for another. Eventually, you will succeed. But even after having multiple internships, I still wasn't prepared for life after college. I even made a video about the 5 biggest differences between college and career, which I'm going to link right here. I highly recommend you watch that video before making the transition yourself.